Hello, chess friends, and welcome to your Out of Chess channel, and welcome back to our hyper accelerated rank Sicilian defense series. So in this series, I'm going to show you a very nice and effective weapon, how to beat e4. And today we're still starting a new line that I think you face many times against Sicilians, and especially of course against hyper accelerated rank Sicilian stuff. You face many times the so-called Grand Prix attack, and the Grand Prix attack is a very aggressive method, and it's a very annoying method that you face many times. And if you don't know what to do, if you just make one inaccurate move in the opening stage, I guarantee you you'll get smashed in an early stage of the game. I've seen many times miniatures that are ending in 15-20 moves in which white is destroying black with the Grand Prix attack. But if you know what you're doing, I think that the Grand Prix attack should not bother you. There are good ideas for black, and that's why I wanted to show you in this video the most important defenses, the most important tactical ideas, and the most important traps that are possible in this opening, and also some things that you should not do if you're playing the Sicilian, because many times I think black is making the same mistakes all over and over again. And as I said, in this video I think we'll cover the most important principles of this opening. So let's check out now what is the Grand Prix attack and how should black play against this annoying setup of white. So first move is of course e4. We have c5 the Sicilian, and after move knight to c3 we can go into normal hyper accelerated rank stuff with the move g6. But here I found some games in which the move order was a little bit different. First of course black can also play the move knight to c6, but now after move f4 we have reached now the Grand Prix attack. So after move g6 and the knight to f3, this will be the normal setup of white. Bishop to g7, and after move bishop to c4, this will be now our cornerstone position of this video. This is now the position that we're analyzing today. So notice that white is really here a great attacking formation. The knight is in a good square, this knight is also in a good square, the bishop has a beautiful activity with the move d3. The dark square bishop will have also a great activity with kingside castling. White can also secure the king, and with these two mobile pawns white can break through with the move e5, maybe with the move f5. So the flexibility of these two pawns will cause some madness in black's position. So that's why you have to solve many positional problems here. First, we should really solve the position problems about this bishop on c4. We should not tolerate this bishop. This is an annoying bishop to handle, especially because of the fact when the f file could get open with the move f5, and when the rook comes in the f file, the f7 could be a long-term weakness. And also with knight to g5, in some tactical ideas are working simply here for white. So that's why we should not tolerate, as I said, first of all, this bishop's activity. So that's why we have to solve these problems with the move e6. And the cool part about the move e6 is that the move e6 is controlling also the f5 square. So many times white will try break and enter here with the f5. White will try even to sacrifice just some pawns just in order to mess up your pawn structure in front of the king. So after move e6 we're analyzing now this move f5 immediately, and don't get surprised if that happens for to you. This is maybe not the optimal move that the top engines are suggesting, but this is something that white will try many times, especially an attacker in chess that will try to get dynamic position will sacrifice the pawn immediately. He's hoping that you're not familiar maybe with some theory and you get destroyed in an early stage of the game. So as I said, here in my opinion what you should not do is to take with the e pawn. E takes f5, maybe when it comes to again to computer regulations is perfectly fine, but in my opinion it's very important to, as I said, to battle against this light square bishop. So that's why when you take with the e pawn you don't have a further control of the d5 square, and the d5 control will be now our main idea. As I said, e6, maybe something like, as we said, e6, then knight to e7, and then d5. We want to kick away simply these bishops from this very annoying diagonal. So that's why it's very important to take with the g pawn. Although in the beginning probably it feels a little bit uncomfortable to weaken the pawn structure here on the king side too much, and I don't know, maybe you get annoyed with some ideas. Then afterwards d3, knight to g5, queen to h5. So you don't want to allow your opponent to get the queen on h5. So that's why many times black is trying to avoid these lines with the move g takes f5, but believe me, this is simply the best way. I'll explain of course what's all about, because as I said, the main tactical goal and strategical goal is just to push the pawn on d5. And now after move d3 and knight to e7, which is very important to control the square, because after e takes f5 we want to still have the opportunity to recapture with the knight. We don't want to take, of course, with the pawn, because then you see we have these two weak pawns. Then afterwards also the h7 is weak. So as I said, it's very important to take then afterwards with the knight. So here after move knight to e7 and kingside castling that you face many times, the problem is, I think, that many times black is trying this way. With the move f takes e4. This would be now again a mistake, I think, here for black, because after d takes e4, notice now that we don't control the d5 square. This is now very important to recognize. Of course, you don't want to give up your powerful bishop just for this knight on c3, because the bishop is not only a good attacker on this diagonal, it's also a good defensive piece if you want to castle kingside and secure the king. So that's why many times black is making the same mistakes all over and over again, simply takes here with f takes e4. This is not something that you should do, because look at this, with this bishop, with the knight, with the queen, and the pawn, white is controlling the d5 square in a good way. When you see then that your opponent has maneuvered his queen to e1 and then to g3 h4, I'm telling you about this maneuver on e1 because this is a maneuver that you faced many times. Then maybe this idea f takes e4 followed with the d5 could work, because then the white's queen is not on the d file where it's further controlling the d5 square. So as I said, here you may get annoyed by this tension in the center of the board, and you want to sometimes release the pressure a little bit just in order to feel very good in the position, and you'll try many times this move f takes e4, but believe me, it's simply a mistake that you should not make. What you should do is here to simply kingside castling, and many of you still don't like this position because you have basically castled into your opponent's attack. Still, white will try queen to e1, queen to g3, queen to h4, but as I said, believe in you, because this is a good position for you. Still, you have opportunities, first of all, to kick away the bishop with the move d5. Maybe if necessary, the knight will come on g6, so you have good opportunities. Maybe then afterwards with a6, b5, you will have a counterattack. You have a good control of the d4 square. This is something that you should not also forget. The knight, the pawn on c5, and the bishop on g7 are controlling the square. So don't forget about your activities, because this is really good position for you, although it seems so that you have made mistakes because you get a little bit vulnerable to your opponent's attacks. But as I said, kingside castling is very important. I'll show you why is it important to castle, because many times I've seen this mistake, d6, and it is sort of a dragon Sicilian way to play the move d6. Then you want to play something like knight to d4, then you want to maybe maneuver your knight on c6, and you have a powerful control of the center, and you think it's perfectly fine. But now you will get smashed, I think, with this ideas. Knight to g5 are causing now many problems. Queen to h5 is now an opportunity with a double attack against the h7, f7, and now, for instance, if you castle on the king side, this is not good, because you had your opportunity to castle and you play the passive move with the move d6. White will have his fun with this move, e takes f5, and we have said e takes f5 is not good because of these weaknesses. So even if you try knight to f5, which seems like a reasonable move to take out with the knight, you get smashed with this tactical shot, rook to f5, e takes f5, and still the queen comes into the game. Notice that this is a weakness here on h7. You have to play h6, but now knight to f7, rook to f7, bishop to f7, and after king to f8. Okay, it seems so that still maybe something went wrong here for white, but especially with this possibilities, knight to d5, with bishop to h6, rook to f1, rook to f5, I guarantee you not have fun here. White is much better, although white is down a whole piece, but still the activity of white pieces is something that bothers now black. And as I said, here the evaluation is also +2 for white, so it's completely winning for your opponent. So that's not what you should do. In my opinion, this is something that you should try to avoid. So as I said, you have your opportunity to castle. Don't play passive moves like d6. Notice also that d5 would be simply too rushed here, because e takes d5, and then here after e takes d5, again you have reached this position where you of course have this isolated pawn that you basically try to avoid. So let's see now also another example where white is making the same mistake. Knight to e7, again d6, again this idea, and here white got challenged with the move knight to e5, try to get rid of this bishop, but still white can proceed here with the move queen to h5. Even if d5 happens now, it's simply too slow because white is building his attack in a good way. Now the threat is of course bishop to e5, with the idea also maybe to deliver checkmate on f7. So now maybe you can try something like h6, but look at this, bishop to b5, knight to c6, but now even knight to e6 is here an opportunity. After f takes e6 is of course not possible. After bishop to e6, look at this one, e takes f5. So there are millions of variations that can happen to you, but believe me, don't do this d6 passive moves. Secure the king by castling and you could have a good game. So here for instance bishop to d7. Now look at this, white is just including more attackers into the game. It's completely lost game. Even if you castle, then you lose the battle around the square h6. So here kingside castling, but now bishop to c6, knight to c6, you see bishop to h6 is simply losing here. Bishop to h6, now queen to h6, and even if you try something like f6, look at this, queen to g6, rook to f3, rook to h3. So as I said, if you play passive moves in the beginning, if you don't secure the king by castling, you could have this tactical ideas by white. So let's see now also what is a common idea that is working for white. After move f5, e takes f5, d3. As we said, this is something that you should not do. F takes e4, because after d takes e4, you don't have any more control of the d5. And I've seen many times, as I said, why black wants to simplify the game. Black feels pressured, just wants to get rid of this annoying pawn storm that is coming. But now here in this position, you could maybe try some ideas of knight to e5 to finally trade off more pieces and simplify the game. But this is still not good because again you're vulnerable here around the square f7. That's now your whole point, that white will try attack now in the continuation. Even if you try queen to f6, then look at this, bishop to d2 is preparing even queenside castling, and both of these rooks will come on active files. Again, I think you could get destroyed. So here knight to e7, we have this one, rook to f1. This is also a beautiful game that I found in the database, and here white played really monstrous attack. The queen had to retreat to g7, but now with rook to f7, here queen to f7, but now the bishop is hanging, now the rook is hanging. Here kingside castling was played, but now after queenside castling by white, again notice with bishop to h6 and something like rook to f1, again the position is simply lost here for black. b6, here bishop to h6, here knight to c6, the counterplay, but here after queen to d6, still the battle is here around the square f8. Here black tried to escape, but now with the rook to f1, look at this weird position here for black. After a couple more moves, black resigned. So that's not the point. As I said, these are, I think, the common mistakes that black is making many times. I think I got the point here because many times you just have sort of a feeling in chess, and then you play a move rely to this feeling. But please believe me that you should actually castle and you could have a comfortable game. Especially I wanted to show you in this game, after move f5, e takes f5, we have now this idea, knight to e7. We have now, for instance, the move bishop to g5. Notice, as I said, simply if kingside castling, we can also kingside castling, and if queen to e1 happens now, then this idea could work. As we said, now it could be working because now with d5 we can finally kick away the bishop. This is a good position now for black. So here let's go back to this position. What you could get here after move knight to e7 is a very unpleasant and annoying move bishop to g5, and in my opinion this is not good again for white because first of all we can kick away this bishop, and now white needs to make a decision. If bishop to e7, then of course knight to e7, and still we have good control of the f5, or still we have also good control of the d5. But if now white retreats to h4 with the bishop, then actually the game is already like lost here for white, because now we have a beautiful move, queen to a5, and this is now a battle around the square c3, where your opponent could maybe kingside castle, but now after bishop to c3, b takes c3 with b5, we have now this stunner, bishop to b3, and now comes the beautiful trap c4, d takes c4, we have b takes c4, bishop to c4, and then of course with here queen to c5, the bishop will be lost here on c4. So it's a beautiful trap. So as I said, this bishop to g5 methods that you face many times are not working. Simple h6, we're waiting. If bishop to d2, then okay, we can still castle and go into our ideas here with f takes e4, then followed with d5, and as I said, you could have a comfortable game. So let's see now a different example, again with the same ideas. Knight to e7, f5. Now white played a different move order. White played first the move d3, not an early f5, but as I said, it gives us time now to play after move f5. We can play even d5 immediately. We don't have to even take out the pawn immediately. Now because of the d3 tempo that white lost, it gave us extra time to play knight to e7, and then we can play d5. Now after bishop to b3. Now what also black should try to avoid is here this move b5. I've seen also many times, because white is black is hoping to go into this tactical sequence with knight to b5, then queen to a5, then you have to cover, and then d4. But actually white doesn't have to play the game like this. White can play simply f takes e6, after f takes e6 kingside castling, and suddenly it's a good game again for white. Although it seems so that maybe with f5 with c4 you could trap the bishop, but actually this is good position again for white after d takes c4, d takes c4. Now queen to d1 could happen to you, and the problem is now you cannot take with the knight. That's the most important thing to recognize, because then you get knight to b5. Here is the threat, knight to c7, and if you make some kind of a reaction, white will simply take out the pawn on c4. So that's why you have to take with the king, and then something like rook to d1 could happen. You have to cover, but still with knight to b5. Okay, we have here this one, c takes b3, after a takes b3. Notice now that also here the a7 is weak. We have also some dynamics here on the d file. Bishop to f4 could happen with some annoying stuff on c7. So although the relation is here slightly better for black, this is still something that you should try to avoid. As I said, if our opponent plays now the move bishop to b3, don't rush into attacks. We can still play d takes e4 now, because the queen is on the d file, and after d takes e4 we can just simplify the game. Queen takes d1, knight to d1. We can play now e takes f5. Now of course after e takes f5, bishop to f5 or knight to f5 are working, and I think we have solved now all of the position problems, because it's very important now to recognize this d file attack. So as I said, d takes e4 and simplify the game by trading off queen. So b5 is, in my opinion, a little bit too rushed. It seems attractive, it seems like a good move that we have played a really aggressive attack, but this is, I think, also a common mistake that black is doing in the game. So as I said, don't rush, just capture and simplify the game by trading off the queens. White didn't gain, in my opinion, anything here. So let's see now another example. Here we have again our cornerstone position with the move e6. Now we have d3 again. White is not playing this early f5, or plays normal move d3, and here after move knight to e7 we have now kingside castling. So white is delaying now any moves. We will try now this maneuver, as we said in the beginning, queen to e1, queen to g3, then or queen to h4, and then f5. So white is delaying the f5 move, but it gives us now first of all time to play the move d5, which is perfectly fine. And after move bishop to b3, we still castle. Now comes this maneuver, queen to e1, and now what we should do, in my opinion, is this move, knight to a5, because your opponent could try maybe some ideas of queen to h4, and this seems that it's very annoying, because knight to g5 will happen, and then you could lose the battle here somehow around the square around the square h7, but actually we can take knight takes b3. After a takes b3, now we can also take here to play the move knight to c6, because if queen to d8 happens, rook to d8, e takes d5, e takes d5, you still we're covering the square, and now I think again we have solved all of the positional problems. We have a control of the d5, we have the bishop pair, and the bishops are good here. This is a good diagonal for the bishop. This bishop can be included into the game here like this on f5, wherever, like e6, maybe even with b6, bishop to b7. But at least I think again we have simplified the game to the stage that I don't think that white gained anything here with this Grand Prix attack. The position is splashed. I don't think that's something that white wants to get in the position. So as I said, after move knight to a5, your opponent could try maybe bishop to d2 as sort of a method, but now you just play with this other knight, because even if you play something like e takes d5, first of all we can take out the bishop, and then we can also here then take out the pawn. So it's also something I think that bothered. Even if you try something like this, I think even if for instance bishop to d5, still you have bishop to c3, then something like bishop to c3, and here the bishop is hanging on d5. Although this is probably something that you don't have to calculate, in my opinion. Just knight to c6, and we're waiting now after something like queen to g3. Now a6 is a very, very important move. Now when the queen is leaving the attack of this diagonal, now b5 c4 is of course a threat. If a3 happens, now knight takes b3 is perfectly fine. C takes b3, you see now we have weakened the pawn structure. Still we have a good control of the f5 square, so it's, in my opinion, a playable position. d4, or maybe d takes e4 could happen. Maybe knight to d4, we have a control of the d4 square. So as I said, many opportunities for both sides, but I think again the pressure is released here in this position now in the continuation after knight to f5. This is also a game that I found in the database. Something like b4 happens, c takes b4, here knight to b3. So as I said, black solved again the most important problems here. So let's go back. This is very important to recognize this ideas of white. Queen to e1 is of course an opportunity, but now don't panic. Knight to a5. First we're getting rid of this bishop again. Here bishop to d2, now knight to c6. Now the queen can come into the game again. Queen to h4 will simply trade off the queen. So this is something that white is trying to avoid. White is trying to stay with the queens on the board. Now again we're chasing the bishop and we have comfortable play. So let's see now another example. It's again this early f5. We have now again the move d3, knight to e7, and here after kingside castling, again this idea queen to e1. White will play many times. As I said, don't get surprised if you face this line. Now f takes e4, we have seen d takes e4, and as we said, f5 or d5 are now opportunities just to simplify the game. f5 is also very interesting because you can face again this aggressive methods with the move bishop to g5, but again don't worry. F takes e4, queen to e4, and again with d5 everything is perfectly fine. Although this is really a wild line, it seems, so that white has some kind of an activity, but here with knight to d5, e takes d5, we have bishop to queen to h4, continue the pressure here around the square e7, but again not a problem. We simply can take, and the game was over after a couple of moves. So this is very important, the battle around the square d5, d5, d5. If you always remember that, I think you should not have problems in the Grand Prix attack. So here let's see now our last example of this very important opening. Again this early f5, we have e takes f5, now knight to f3. This was a little bit different move order. Knight to e7, and what white could do maybe is an aggressive knight to g5 move in order to create madness immediately, but actually now with h6 you can still kick away the knight, and it seems so. Many times white is thinking that he could sacrifice something with knight to f7, queen to f7. Okay, after kingside castling, white could have his fun by some checks, but you can always escape. Here you can still play the move d5. As I said, if you know your plan, then you don't have problems. Even in this position d5 is working, although white has enormous pressure here on the f file, but that's not the problem here after move e takes f5, still we can take e takes f5. Notice that still we have a good control of the d5. You can escape, but now with bishop to e6, again you can solve all of those different problems. Here in this game that I found also in the database, white tried an aggressive g4, but here with knight to d4 everything is glued together. Look how black is controlling the game with his pieces actually, although the king is a little bit vulnerable here. But after g takes f5, here knight to f5 was played, and still these two knights are very active. We have a control of the d5. Now what we want to do is play something like rook to f8, king to g8, and then maybe king to h8 is perfectly fine. We'll solve again the positional problems of black. So queen to h5 was played. Now we had king to g8, bishop to d2, and now even c4 worked here. Just enormous pressure against the bishop. The d takes c4, d takes c4. Here the bishop got attacked, but now with bishop to f7, again it was game over here for white. So as I said in the beginning, it seems so that white is always something that white can attack you, but if you stuck to your plan, d5 d5 d5, securing the king, g takes f5. Let's go back to the beginning of our opening theory. So as I said, after kingside castling, very important now to castle. It seems so, as I said, that you're a little bit naked because you don't have the knight on f6. The knight is natural on f6, but still this knight can be also sometimes used if necessary, maybe to jump on g6 to control the g file attack. So as I said, our main goal is just to play d5 d5, and I think you don't have problems in the continuation of the game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed our Grand Prix studies. We'll continue now also in the continuation with our boulder attack and also with the McDonald attack that are also popular against Sicilians. But then we're not playing anymore the hyper accelerated way. We're playing a different way. So this McDonald and boulder attack are basically working against any Sicilian, so that's why we don't have to even play this hyper accelerated rank way. It will be also added of course into our playlist, but as I said, the Grand Prix attack I think now we have solved. Still of course there are many opportunities. If you have problems, study it further, because of course we cannot cover all of these lines that are possible, as I said, but as a cornerstone position I think these ideas of e6 d5 are simply working for black, and you could have good counterplays against this very annoying stuff. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the study. If you want to see more about the hyper accelerated rank Sicilian defense, check out our whole playlist with some more ideas for white and for black. And if you have problems maybe to play against d4, check out my Nimzo Indian defense series, in which I've explained to you the most important ideas of that opening. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.